Hey guys, another one-take review as well as the 15th entry, the third to last entry in my Rock Hall review series, and today I wanted to talk about jazz rap legends, masters of the mic, whatever you like to refer to them as, A Tribe Called Quest, one of my personal favorite hip-hop groups, and maybe just one of my personal favorite groups in general. Being the often masterpiece entitled record that the Low End Theory is, I kind of constantly expect it to not quite live up to my expectations, or at least the expectations that the hype surrounding it would give you. I mean, there are just so many records within hip hop that are very beloved and quoted as being masterpieces and the greatest records ever made, like Jay-Z's Reasonable Doubt or Paul's Boutique by the Beastie Boys. And as great as both of those records are, they're just a couple of examples of albums that I think are lesser than what is generally seen by most to be. I think that they just kind of are less great than a lot of people say they are. They aren't quite the masterpiece material. However, I think A Tribe Called Quest have just about delivered what you could consider a hip hop masterpiece with the Low End Theory. They bring it like almost no other group did at the time. Between the main MCs of Q-Tip and Phife Dawg, I will say that I do slightly prefer Q-Tip over Phife. That isn't to say Phife is a bad rapper. He's a great rapper, actually, which is something I'll get to in a minute. But Q-Tip just kind of has a laid-back flow that really works as he sort of weaves over the very jazzy beats that are some of my personal favorites of early 90s rap and hip-hop. And I think that some of the more Q-Tip based cuts, like Verses from the Abstract, end up being the primary highlights of the Low End Theory overall. But again, it's not that Phife Dawg's a bad rapper. He's pretty fantastic. I just do think that Q-Tip is the face of A Tribe Called Quest for a reason, and that is developed greatly throughout the Low End Theory's runtime. If I'm actually being honest, Phife Dawg is kind of underrated here, if anything. He has a slightly more in-your-face style compared to Q-Tip, but is equally chill in his delivery, and he acts as a nice parallel to Q-Tip while also still complementing similar types of beats that make sure that the album's tone overall is still very consistent. His verses on songs like Buggin' Out and Check the Rhyme, as well as the just Phife Dawg based songs such as Butter, see him take on some really great leadership roles that I think a lot of people don't really expect from Phife, at least in comparison to Q-Tip, with most of the really iconic and well known verses on here coming from Q. But I do think that Phife Dawg is very underrated, and I think that his flow on here is maybe less iconic, less famous. Maybe he's just even a less well known rapper in general than Q Tip, but at the same time, I think he had a very unique style that is dearly missed since his passing several years back. As many have said over the years, the Low End Theory instrumentally is just some of what jazz rap has to offer at its best. I think it's a defining example of the genre, one of the most shining examples of the genre without a doubt. I mean, it opens up with that gorgeous bass line and those really crisp drums of Excursions, and it just does not let up from there. In other tracks like Show Business and even the album closer and very popular song Scenario, have some just excellent jazz instrumentals that not only complement Phife Dawg and Q-Tip as performers in their own individual ways, but also guests like Busta Rhymes and even Charlie Brown that probably I won't say would have been weaker without the type of jazz instrumentals that are presented here because both are very talented artists in their own right, but at the same time, I do feel like everything here in terms of actual performance and delivery is just taken up at least a notch or two just because of the fact that the beats here are nothing short of amazing. Something that makes the Low End Theory such a unique experience as a first time front to back listen in general, and even after multiple listens, is the production, mixing, and general behind the scenes work, which is mainly credited towards the band themselves, but I will say that also Skeff Anselm does get some credit for producing Show Business as well as Everything is Fair, two immaculately produced songs that I think should be talked about more in terms of actual behind the scenes work and non performer work. And overall, I think the reason that the Low End Theory works so well in terms of actual sound quality is that it almost feels like you're at a concert just hearing this album performed from front to back, all 50 or so gorgeous minutes of it. I think that this very engaging atmosphere that is brought about in this sort of front row at a concert sort of setting is kind of what makes it such a just fun listen, whether you're going into it for critical analysis and you're ready to take everything super seriously, or you're just going in to have some fun and enjoy a really great, really highly beloved, very charming jazz rap album, I think no matter what, it's just a very enjoyable listen, no matter which way you look at it, and that really is just because of the atmosphere that is provided by the production. Overall, I do genuinely believe that the low end theory is the milestone in rap and hip hop that everybody says it is. Obviously, like I said at the beginning of this video, it's easy to overstate the importance or the quality of any album for whatever reason, be it influence or anything else. That can go for any genre too, of course, that's not just hip hop or rap, that's literally any type of music you can imagine. But I do think that the low end theory is one of those exceptions. I think that the unique rhymes and the unique flows of Phife Dawg and Q-Tip, along with just their amazing lyricism at times, that kind of goes between incredibly well written and playful to very powerful, really make sure that A Tribe Called Quest are not only at their peak here on the low end theory, but also deliver some of the best work that early 90s hip hop has to offer, jazz rap has to offer, and just in general, rap and hip hop as a genre has to offer. This is one of the best records of the genre. So, with that being said, I'm going to give this 4.5 stars out of 5, and I am incredibly close to giving it a 5, but there's a couple songs here or there, like Sky Pager, that I'm kind of indifferent on overall, but even still, that's very close to a 5, and 4.5 stars out of 5. Now, this is usually the point in the review where I just, do my little sign off and I say see you guys in the next video. But this is my Rock Hall review series, so at the end of each review, I talk about the artist, not so much the album itself, but the artist themselves, and talk about their importance. Do they deserve to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and will they get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? And as far as deserving goes, A Tribe Called Quest deserves to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for multiple reasons. I mean, first of all, they're one of the most innovative hip-hop groups of all time. I mean, no band mastered jazz rap or jazz beats or such a niche genre of East Coast hip-hop like A Tribe Called Quest did, at least not in my opinion, anyway. And there are a number of artists today that you can still hear A Tribe Called Quest influence in, be it in the mainstream or the hip-hop underground. And I do think that in general they are a defining group of East Coast hip-hop music, and just late 21st century East Coast music in general. I know there's a lot of people that say, oh, the hip hop doesn't belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is one of the most boring things that you can possibly argue about. If you say that, I'm assuming you're an incredibly boring person. I mean, no offense to you, but it's just such a boring, overdone statement, and rock and roll is an attitude, and it's a certain type of presentation. If anything, some artists that are already inducted are less rock and roll than A Tribe Called Quest. People like Bobby Darin are less rock and roll than Tribe Called Quest. And I don't think that, Bobby Darin deserves to be in, but my point is, rock and roll is a broad term, and I don't think that rock and roll and rock are the exact same thing per se. They can be, but I don't think they are. And with that being said, I think A Tribe Called Quest, like I said before as well, with influence and just general importance and music industry respect, I do think that they deserve to be in. As for will they get inducted, at least this year, I say no, unfortunately. As much as I would love for them to get inducted, like I said before, they are one of my favorite bands, but Eminem is on the ballot this year. For those of you who aren't aware, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame basically inducts one hip-hop artist every year. It was, Tupac, and then it was Biggie, and, last year was Jay-Z. This year is Eminem. That's the facts. Eminem's getting inducted this year. My jaw will drop if he does not get inducted this year somehow, some way. But at the same time, I do think that A Tribe Called Quest have a chance to get in eventually. They are an incredibly well-respected band. I mean, if you just look at a publication like Rolling Stone, they just ranked the Low End Theory, I think, in the top 100 albums ever made. It may have even made the top 50 for all I know. Publications like Pitchfork have, of course, always respected them. I think I've read that Stereo Gum said some nice things about A Tribe Called Quest, or at least the Low End Theory at some point. My point is, widely respected, beloved group. And I think that, I don't want to say guarantees you an induction, because obviously there are bands like the Pixies that have never even been nominated, and they're incredibly adored by millions of people. But I do think that Tribe Called Quest are also just in general one of the more notable hip-hop acts. And if they are the next hip-hop group or artist to get in after Eminem, I won't be totally surprised. I do think that there are a couple that have a chance of getting him beforehand. I think Outkast might get nominated before A Tribe Called Quest. Dr. Dre might get nominated as a solo artist, even though he belongs in as a non-performer, but they'll probably induct him as a solo artist. There's just a couple that might get nominated before A Tribe Called Quest, but overall, I do think that Tribe Called Quest will get in eventually. If they do, maybe that'll lead the way for some more light-hearted hip-hop at times, like De La Soul and whatnot. But until then, I think A Tribe Called Quest is the main form of what people would refer to as alternative hip hop getting nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I think they'll get in at least within the next 5 years, probably at least. So that is the end of this review. Overall, don't think they'll get in this year for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but I think they've got a good shot, at least within the next few years or so. But The Low End Theory is an amazing album, and if you haven't heard it, which I'm sure many of you watching this have, but on the off chance that you haven't heard it, I highly recommend it. I give it 4.5 stars out of 5. The beats are great. The rapping is phenomenal. The lyricism is pretty out of this world for early 90s hip hop, especially. It's kind of hard to describe how important this album actually was for the time period. I do think that, early 90s was kind of a very transitional period for hip hop, and it wasn't until about the mid 90s that the genre really found its footing with some true, legitimate classics that weren't exactly singles. Because, well, not for nothing, but as much as, say, The Message by Grandmaster Flash is a classic song, they weren't, pushing out the classic albums or anything like that. So this was a very strange time for the genre of hip hop, and I do think that A Tribe Called Quest were one of the most phenomenal bands of the early 90s in general. And yeah, with that being said, 4.5 stars out of 5. Won't get in this year, but they probably will get in eventually into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And with that being said, that is the end of this review, and I will see you guys in the next one. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention next episode of the series. I'm talking about a Eurythmics album, Eurythmics, because it's my second to last entry in the series. But I forgot to mention it, and I don't feel like editing this video. So, next time, join me, Eurythmics. But until then, that's the end of this video, and I will see you guys in the next one, the Eurythmics one. I'll see you guys in that one.